This is a sold-out event. Thank you so much for coming. My name, one of my board members told me the other time, and it was you, right? Then I left the stage, and then you didn't say your name. Nobody knows who you are. So, my name is Ariel Listman, and I'm honored to be the executive director of Eugene Parks Foundation. Our mission is rooted in the belief that parks are more than just open spaces. They are lifelines to our soul and the soul of our community. We work to expand and to build more miles of trails, preserve natural habitats, and provide much needed amenities and programs that enrich the lives of everyone who called Eugene home. 2 years ago, one of our esteemed board members, Sir Kenny Helfand, we knighted him, spearheaded a visionary initiative called the Parks Talk Series. What started as an intimate gathering has now grown into a thriving movement, drawing in hundreds of passionate advocates for parks and nature, many of whom are with us tonight. This vibrant community is evidence of the deep-rooted love and dedication Eugene has for its parks. I want to recognize our chairman of the board, Claire Syrette, is here. Thank you, Claire, for coming. EPF board is here. Representative of the EPF new advisory board is here. JB Carney, where are you, sir? Thank you so much for coming. And I also want to extend special acknowledgement to Mayor-elect Karen Knudsen. Wait, just a second. Wait. Her unwavering commitment to this city and her support for our shared vision speaks volumes about her leadership and the bright future we can all look forward to. Now you can clap. Thank you. We live in challenging times. If ever we forget, an election cycle is sure to remind us. It is a time where we are told that individualism reigns supreme, that the world is divided into us and them, and that the game of life is zero-sum. We are constantly reminded what set us apart. But in the face of such challenges, I stand here tonight to tell a different story, a story of unity, resilience, and hope. Here, amid the noise, we witness the strength and impact of Rivers to Ridges Partnership, a coalition of organizations and agencies that didn't have to come together, but chose to. They chose to align their resources and vision for the betterment of our region, for all of us. This evening, in a packed auditorium, we gather to reflect on the incredible milestones this partnership has achieved and to look ahead at what the next 2 decades hold. It's a moment of celebration, anticipation, and renewed commitment. However, as much as I would love to, this isn't my story to tell alone. And so it is my great pleasure to introduce someone who has been pivotal to this journey. Joe Mall, Executive Director of Mackenzie River Trust and the current Executive Team Lead for Rivers to Ridges. Please join me in welcoming him to the stage.
That was interesting, Ariel. You pronounced your name two ways, Ariel and Ariel. Which is it?
I know.
Which is it?
Ariel.
Ariel.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck with that.
Thank you, Ariel, for that introduction. And thank you to the Eugene Parks Foundation for the invitation to speak and introduce our real speaker tonight, Jeff Kruger. In addition to being the executive director of the trust, as Ariel mentioned, I'm the head of the XT, the executive team for this year, which is just a way that we stay in contact over the course of the year. On behalf of the 19 member organizations in the Rivers to Ridges Partnership, I guess I'm the aperitif to get your appetite up for the full course menu that Jeff is going to serve us tonight. And I'm going to do that with a story, brief story. There was a day, a summer's day, maybe 2011, I think it was. I woke at dawn and headed out my door, down the street and onto a bark trail for a run. I was fit then and able to run up the Amazon Headwaters Trail and across the base of Spencer's Butte and back home in about an hour. It was magical, beautiful, energizing. On sections of the trail along the ridgeline or in the Thurston Hills or in the Middle Fork Path, you can lose yourself mentally. I can at least. And I can be anywhere in the Pacific Northwest, and that makes me really, really happy. That was just the start of the day. Back home, I helped the kids get out the door to school and then drove to Clearwater Park on the Middle Fork. There I met Jeff Ziller, the watershed wizard and guru of fish from Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, and then Sue Palmer, who was writing for the Register Guard at the time, beautifully and with great content. She was writing a story then about the larger conservation community and work on the river, and so we decided to go see it firsthand. We loaded up Jeff Ziller's drift boat and meandered down the Middle Fork to its confluence with the Coast Fork, down through Glenwood, down through Springfield, down through Eugene, to the confluence of the McKenzie and the Willamette, and on to Green Island, where we, the McKenzie River Trust, and many partners in the Rivers to Ridges Partnership had started habitat restoration there that's now been going on for nearly 20 years. Throughout the day, we floated in and out of eyesight and earshot of people like us who were feeling the river, breathing the trees in the sunlight, reveling in this place. We shared the day with eagles and osprey and other anglers, with salmon and trout and people swimming, with otter and beaver and other creatures of all ages running, walking, cycling, and just sitting there on the side of the river, all in some kind of play, sporting childlike grins of happiness. My stiffening sore legs still carried the measure of the trails I had followed that morning, but in my mind's eye I could look up at Spencer's Butte and see myself there, at the same time looking back down at us on the river. When it comes to the care and feeding of our creativity, our humanity, as you mentioned, the advances of cinema and virtual reality pale in comparison to being in place, to being in nature. In that one perfect day, I was able to see and experience the connections at the heart of the Rivers to Ridges project, the land and water that are truly the source of our community. I mean, how lucky are we here? We have forests and meadows and parklands and wildness, not just on the fringes, but in the very heart of our cities, where you can step into a river and catch a seagoing creature like a steelhead or a Chinook salmon or now a coho, with osprey and eagles hanging over your shoulder. Cities where in a matter of minutes you can be standing in tall firs or lying beneath the shade of a spreading oak while dozens of dragonflies skim off the mosquitoes that would otherwise disturb your nap. Indeed, we are fortunate, but the state of the parks and trails and open space waterways in our communities is not just a matter of luck. This landscape still reflects the long, deep history of land stewardship practiced by the native Kalapuyan people, for whom it is still home. And some of our treasured places, like Spencer Butte, were set aside by thoughtful people in the face of tremendous development pressure nearly a century ago. And over the last 30 plus years that the R2R has been around, as those and other pressures have been unrelenting, an increasingly integrated and growing group of visionaries and actors have coalesced into the organizations that make up the Rivers to Ridges Partnership. And they are stitching together a future of accessible natural areas that will nourish us and our grandchildren and their grandchildren through the challenges that we likely can't even begin to imagine. We are indeed fortunate to have collaborations like the R2R and visionary actors like the Parks Foundation who continue to build on this legacy of natural gifts. I do hope you had a chance to talk with Parks Foundation staff and board members this evening to learn about their trail work and the opportunity that they have to add more land to this fabric of public good. It is a rare and beautiful opportunity they have with the Hudson family and the Forest Ranch property acquisition. I encourage you to learn about it, and I encourage you to support it generously. So now let's turn to that quilt of parks and open space and hear from someone whose life work has been intimately woven into this effort. Jeff Kruger studied environmental design in Massachusetts and landscape architecture at the University of Oregon. But while he carries himself with the demeanor and careful attention you'd expect of a design and architecture specialist, since he's been a friend and colleague for 20 years, I've gotten to understand that really he was born of the mountains of northern Montana, where he worked as a backcountry ranger. I think those experiences, including seeing how transformative a dance with the wild can be for people, those experiences feed the steady, warm heart of a masterful planner, ecologist, and yes, registered landscape architect. For more than 30 years, he has shared that love and that expertise with colleagues at LCOG and the University of Oregon, with students and peers at dozens of partner organizations, and with all of us lucky to be able to work with him in the Rivers to Ridges Partnership and beyond. Please join me in welcoming Jeff Kruger.
I think I'm good to go. Thank you, Joe. That was wonderful. And he wouldn't read the bio I gave him, so he ad-libbed. And Joe and I have done a lot of fun things over the years out in the rivers and the ridges of our area. So I'm very excited to be presenting on behalf of Rivers to Ridges Partnership. So I want to make it really clear I'm not presenting on behalf of myself. I'm presenting on behalf of the 19 partners that make up Rivers to Ridges. And it's Rivers to Ridges, it's kind of an interesting operation. There's not an executive director. It's just a loose coalition of partners that have worked collaboratively, starting in West Eugene and then expanding into all of the southern Willamette Valley focus. There are currently 19 partners. Look at all those partners. And many of the folks are here today. So if you're like on the executive team or the implementation team for Rivers to Ridges or just involved in any way, if you want to raise your hand. So we have wow, that's great. And this group here, it's like a class reunion for me. It's just a lot of people I know. My parents are right over there, and my wife Sally. And so this is really, I'm excited to be having the spotlight here. There's a lot I want to get through, and I'm really only going to be able to touch on a little bit of what Rivers to Ridges is and the partnership. So I'm going to talk about, I've been involved with this for quite a number of years, and initially give you kind of a retrospective of how the vision was first developed and why, and about the partnership. I did want to just take a second to thank you, Ariel, for inviting us to do this, the partnership. This is a great message, and it's fun to be able to give it to an enthusiastic audience. So thank you for that. We bumped into each other in a coffee shop with Kenny, and you said you were looking for park talks, and I said, well, I have a good one, Rivers to Ridges. So here we are. So the list of partners you see here, I'll just talk about that a little bit. This partnership was formalized in 2008. It had been the West Eugene Wetlands Partnership focused on West Eugene, but it expanded as everyone's geographic interests became broader and as partners were added. There are 11 nonprofit organizations involved. It's the 2 land trusts. Joe Mall represents Mackenzie River Trust, and I saw Jason back there, the Nature Conservancy. The 4 watershed councils, the Mackenzie, Willamette, Middle Fork, the Coast Fork, and Long Tom are represented. Friends of Beaufort Park and Mount Pisgah Arboretum, the Willamette River Keeper, and the Institute for Applied Ecology, which is based in Corvallis. They do a lot of research on the wetlands and various projects. And then the WREN, which is the Willamette Resource Education Network, and there are at least one representative here today from that group. We also have state and federal agencies, so a lot of groups coming together here. Oregon Parks and Recreation, ODFW, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Army Corps of Engineers, and the BLM, and they all have their kind of overlapping interests and overlapping geographies. So it's kind of the quilt metaphor Joe was talking about. And then local governments, Willamette, there's at least a couple people here from Willamette, City of Eugene as well, and Lane County. I did want to just acknowledge, so I've been working with the partnership on updating the vision, and the people this is a voluntary partnership. So people like Joe Mall have stepped up. Okay, I'm going to, for no extra pay and not my job description, but I'm going to be the leader of the executive team. Shelley Miller in the front row is our longtime treasurer. So she gets to wield the $9,000, which is the Rivers to Ridges budget every year. So she enjoys doing that. Sean Stewart, I don't think is here. He's with State. Oh, Sean's here. He's with State Parks. And then Riley Newman from the Coast Fork Watershed Council way back there is kind of overseeing the field operations group and coordinating field trips. We also work closely with key partners, the 2 tribes, Confederated Tribes of the Siletz and the Grand Ronde, the Eugene Parks Foundation. The National Park Service assisted us with updating the vision, and then the Upper Willamette Stewardship Network and Upper Willamette Soil and Water Conservation District. A lot of acronyms and a lot of partners. So someone going to see how many times I say partner and partnership in this presentation. So the partnership is a vision statement. It's put together to basically look at the Upper Willamette Valley and implement the ecosystem restorations, habitat restoration, education, outdoor recreation, as outlined in the original 2003 Rivers to Ridges vision. Tonight I'm going to talk about kind of how the vision initially was. Why do we have a vision in the first place? What prompted that to happen? I'm going to highlight some accomplishments. Really focus. I have it organized around rivers and ridges, strangely enough. Again, I was not able, I kind of kept it metro focused. The watershed councils are doing amazing things upstream, and that's whole other presentation right there. We're going to do a quick break at some point for Ariel, had a couple of announcements, and then I'll talk about the vision refresh. So in 2023, the partnership completed updating, refreshing the vision. And that was what was pinned up on the wall out in the entry. And then we'll look forward to the next 20 years. Again, touching on some of the key points, but what are we going to focus on as a partnership moving forward? And I'm a laser pointer guy. I'm going to try not to do too much waving around, but it's helpful with maps. So the up here, the City of Eugene, City of Springfield, to get you oriented, and then the watersheds are outlined in the blue on this map. Originally, the Rivers to Ridges vision worked on this yellow line, so that's an area, it's the Eugene, Springfield, it's the small cities, and then all the rural lands, and that was kind of the initial visioning process. Through the refresh, we've looked broader, and the partners have a lot of broader interests. So the Coast Fork, Middle Fork, Long Tom, and Mackenzie are all included in a broader sense, and there's a map out there which includes that area. So going way back now, so I was involved in a lot of things going way back, and I actually have this secret map in my basement. Kit Larson, I bumped into him somewhere. He had it in his basement. He said, "I don't want this anymore." But the FRESH, so who is involved? Anyone know what FRESH is even, other than Steve Gordon there? It's Friends of Eugene Springfield Habitats. And that was a offshoot of Lane County Audubon. And it was just a bunch of people in a grassroots kind of setting getting together after work, doing some visioning. So people like Kit Larson and Steve Gordon and Louis Kreck and John Etter, who is here tonight as well. Just getting together with markers and marking on the maps. That was my skill set. They let me draw on the map. So that was fun. So this was really the first attempt at trying to pull together a regional vision with these key connections. I'll hang on to this map until I'm about 80 years old, and I'll look for someone else to hand it to. Just in the way of background, so in the river, I talked about FRESH. This is my daughter, by the way. I integrate my kids into a lot of these. And I was at a meeting. It was 1999. It was the local elected officials, so the city of Eugene, Springfield, Willamette, and the County Board of Commissioners had gotten together, and there was federal funding available. And it became really clear quickly that there was no big picture concept. People didn't really understand, like, what are we trying to achieve, and what types of land should we be acquiring? So that prompted the elected officials to get together and contract with Lane Council of Governments, where I was employed, to do a visioning process. And it was initially given to us as the Eugene Springfield Metropolitan Regional Parks and Open Space Study. So we shortened that quickly to Rivers to Ridges, a little easier to remember. But they gave us some real clear direction moving forward, limiting impacts to developable land. So basically looking at the fringe areas outside the urban growth boundary, so we're not acquiring land that's also slated for future development, using a non-regulatory approach. And that's really an important direction here. This is not a land use plan. It's not an adopted plan. It's a vision. So we were to stay away from new regulation. And then voluntary participation, probably the most important thing here. Landowners, nothing is mandated. Landowners are voluntary participants if they want to be. Partners are voluntary. They can take direction, but it's not mandated as well. And then relying on a partnership, and at the time when Rivers to Ridges started, there was a lot of like introducing people from Willamette to Lane County Parks to City of Eugene staff that had never met before. They're doing kind of the same thing. So that was a clear indication that that needed to happen. And then multi-objectives. So Rivers to Ridges is habitat, it's recreation, it's education, visual quality. We had a whole bunch of public workshops, and going back, this is the way back machine. There's Steve Gordon, one of my mentors at LCOG, sitting there. We had a series of public workshops, and the basic question we were asking people, or the premise was, you've gotten a job somewhere else, you've left Eugene and Springfield region, you don't return for 30 years. You become sentimental and you decide, I'm going to go back and see how things turned out. And you spend several days traveling, kind of like Joe, traveling the open space system. You're in really good shape, so you're able to do that. And then we asked people to describe what they were envisioning. And it was as simple as that, just kind of jotting those ideas down. And then we had a big day-long design workshop, or a charrette, where we invited all the local nonprofits and partners, that a lot of whom are partners today, to get together. And these are people that had a lot of knowledge about past plans and where great opportunities were, and then developing maps through the work session. Here's an example of one of those maps. So it's not a finished map. It's Robin Hostick, I think, who's a local artist, was the scribe on this one. But it's generally identifying a lot of those themes in Rivers to Ridges, the importance of ridges and waterways for connecting open space, where some of the key areas where key agricultural lands are located. So this was one of 5 or 6 maps, and remarkably, they came back, we presented at the end of the day, and a lot of similarities, which made things a lot easier for actually starting to develop that vision map. So I'm going to I digress many times here. I'm going to talk a little bit about landscape history. And, excuse me, the Willamette Valley, and many of you are aware of this, historically was a lot of wide open prairie, grasslands, oak savanna, oak woodland, kind of kept in that condition by the native Kalapuyan people who've, for thousands of generations, or thousands of years, many generations, would burn the valley to open it up for travel, it's thought, and food production, camas production, making it easier to hunt, and so on. And that's the landscape that the Euro-American settlers inherited when we got here. There was a broad area of expansive prairie. This is one of the most fascinating and useful maps for describing why we are concerned about those habitats. So I'll say almost all of the state and federal funding coming in for land acquisition, conservation, is focused on these habitat types that you see on the map and that were historically here. So grasslands, upland and wetland prairie, oak woodlands, riparian, and wetlands were the primary. So on the map here, you see the brown areas are oak habitat, and this one on the left here is 1850s. The sand color is prairie, and then the green, kind of running along, you can see here on the Willamette River corridor, very broad expanses of big floodplains and big riparian areas. And then you fast forward to 2004, and the map is essentially the same. You can barely see those habitat types on the map. So all those species that evolved over those thousands of years to be dependent on open prairie and oak landscapes and big riparian areas with wide flowing rivers have declined dramatically. So that's why a lot of that funding is targeted for those. We're right here. This custom-built map. This is, again, a historical vegetation map. So it's showing, I think Bill Klingman, who's here, made this map many years ago. And it's the same color scheme. The brown is oak habitats. The light green and sand is prairie. So you can see much of Eugene and much of Springfield are in that condition with the really broad riparian areas along the river. And then it wasn't until you got to the higher elevations up in these areas and in the north-facing slopes of like Spencer Butte and Skinner Butte that you had the conifer forest. So moving to 2003, so this is when the initial vision was developed. This was the condition of the parks and open space system. So everything in green on the map is either public or conserved property. Some of the big ones you'll recognize. This is Howard Buford Recreation Area, Doris Ranch, the Ridgeline System in Spencer Butte, Alton Baker Park, the West Eugene Wetlands, which at this time was a new thing. A lot of that land was acquired in the 1980s and 90s. So looking at those key open space anchors, so you see the asterisks on the map kind of indicate a lot of those areas. Those are important areas from a regional standpoint. And then there are a number of additional asterisks on the map that indicate areas that are important open space, but they don't have protection. So the Coburg Hills, the confluence areas, the Mackenzie comes in here, the confluence area and the area downstream, the Spencer Creek, Coyote Creek area, both above and below the dam. So the asterisks were really not property specific. We're getting away from that on a vision like this, but these are areas that the partnership was going to be focusing on. So over a period of about 20 years, This is a fun map here. We went from the vision, which I should add the blue lines along the river and the ridgetop, those are connectors. So thinking about the rivers and ridges as the connectors of those open space areas. Kind of like pearls on the necklace. So the pearls are the big, like Howard Buford Recreation Area, Spencer Butte, and then using the ridge lines and the rivers to tie those things together. So over about 20-year period, whoopsie, let's see. Oh, I'll get back to that famous map I was talking about. So first of all, the endorsement process. So this is kind of important. This is not a land use plan, so it wasn't, the city council didn't go through the whole public process, but they relied on the public process that the partners had gone through. We got about 10 letters from interest groups around the community, Lane County Audubon, the Sierra Club, the home builders, the League of Women Voters, just a broad representation of the community, and then brought the vision to the elected bodies and asked for an endorsement of the vision. So not adoption, but an endorsement. So the two city councils, Eugene, Springfield, the Lane County Board of Commissioners, and the Willamette Board, all went through that process, reviewed it, and unanimously, so every single person voted yes on endorsing the vision. So that was really strong direction for the partners that we hit the mark and that this was something to move forward on. That was not an easy process. So 2002 vision, so this is what was officially adopted. And then in the 20 years that went past that, these are the lands that were added to the system, so about 10,000 acres. So everything in purple here, I'll do that one more time because it's really fun. Yeah, give yourself a round of applause. So 10,000 acres, and I'm just going to point out a few of the big ones here. So the confluence area, the Nature Conservancy acquired the Coast Fork and Middle Fork confluence. TNC also, the Jaquah property conservation easement. Some of these are easements, meaning they're protected, but there's not public access. Others have public access. It's kind of a range. Number of ridgeline properties, which I'll talk about in more detail here. Look at Coyote, Spencer Creek, both above and below the reservoir. Significant wetland areas acquired during this process. The Thurston Hills in Springfield, their version of the ridgeline. And the Camp Creek Hills, is that the proper term for that? The Siletz acquisition, great oak habitat in that area. And Green Island is another one that I'm going to highlight today, so 1,000 acres. And these are big, so a lot of the ones I mentioned are 500,000 acres, just very large properties. So over that, the partnership tracks progress made toward the vision. So some of the highlights, we're almost up to 10,000 acres of land now. This is a couple years old. 62 miles of stream that are open for fish passage. 2,829,934 plants planted. That's a lot of plants. 10,000 acres of habitat restored. And then about roughly 60 miles of new trails and paths were added to the system in that 20-year period. So great accomplishment. And so many partners were involved in all of these. I'm going to highlight a few examples of what the partnership's done in project areas. One is the prescribed ecological fire program. So this is something you may be familiar with, but trying to manage those fire-dependent habitats really requires bringing fire back whenever possible to clear the land to promote growth of native plants. And the tracking, you can see there's a little blip in the COVID years, but ever so slightly increasing capacity. And this is a really difficult thing to do. You got to hit the burn window just right. You got to do the permitting, get everything set up. You got to have the resources. The fires up in the mountains have to have died down, and then it can't start raining too early, right, Jason? That's something that the partners are scrambling this time of year, and this is not complete in 2024, but it's over 200 acres, pretty substantial amount, and the burn plans are for even broader areas once we hit those conditions correctly. These are fascinating photos, and Paul Gordon, who is here, is the excellent drone pilot and flies a lot of these fires so you can see what's going on. And this is why we burn these prairies. This is in a picture. This is in West Eugene. This is the year the spring following a burn. And you can see the response in the camas, the woody vegetation has moved into the prairie has been knocked back. And that's an ideal situation right there. It's just a beautiful picture. Again, this is a Paul Gordon. Whoops. So the partnership, when the elected officials endorsed the vision, there was a lot of we'd like more detail here, and at the time it was not. There was a lot of concerns about identifying specific properties, which is why the asterisks were used. But they asked at the time if we could do some refinements on certain areas. So the Ridgeline area, the Willamette River corridor, and the Mackenzie corridor. Lower Mackenzie, and then the 2023 is the vision update. If you really want to dig into this stuff, there's a great website, also managed by Shelley, which is Rivers to Ridges, and has a lot of annual reports if you want to see what's going on from year to year. But it's really important to point out that all of these vision documents, right from 2003 to the most current, reflect a lot of the partners' plans. So everyone's doing their own parks and open space system plans and watershed plans. To the greatest extent possible, we try to reflect everyone's concepts in these vision maps. It's really important. As people go out for, organizations go out for funding, being able to show how your project fits into the big picture has been really important. Okay, so these are the general areas I'm going to talk about. So Ridgeline, including Thurston Hills, and the Willamette River, to highlight a few projects. But before I'm going to do that, I'm going to digress one more time and talk about the importance of a vision. So this is Eugene in what year? 1890. So you've all seen this picture before, right? You're on Skinner Butte looking towards Spencer Butte, way out in the distance. It's like this far away mountain. Spencer Butte my understanding, Champotee was the Calipuyan name for the butte. But citizens in the Eugene area and Springfield would go out and make this a destination, a day-long trip to get out there. They had a vision, and there was some threat of development or logging on the butte, which in the 1930s really spurred action. But just to kind of highlight what an epic journey it was to get out to the butte. This is an article that's been going around 1877 from what became the Register Guard. So I'm just going to read a few paragraphs here. So picture yourself in 1877 trying to get to Spencer Butte. At an early hour last Saturday, according to previous arrangements, Professor Condon, accompanied by his university class, started for the top of Spencer's Butte. Quite a large number of citizens in buggies, backs, and lumber wagons, on horseback and on foot, followed in procession, the road being very rough and the hills rather steep. Before reaching the butte, all the male portion of the company, and quite a large sprinkling of the female, enjoyed the luxury of a good long walk in the fresh mountain air. The journey to the base of the butte was made without serious accident to anyone, and the company halted on the southwest side, hitched up their teams, and made ready for the long pole, the strong pole, the hot pole to the top. In a short time, the west side of the butte was dotted here and there with pedestrians of all ages struggling up the steep ascent. Finally, the summit was reached by all, except for one or two whose physical strength had failed them. They didn't put the names in there. What a grand view of magnificent scenery burst upon the vision. So that's just, can you imagine, I got to the Spencer Butte parking lot and I call home and say, I made it to the parking lot without serious accident. So this quote here is from one of the visionaries at the time, Mayor Wilkins, the head of the Parks Commission in 1935 as well. And remember, Eugene boys and girls will be climbing Spencer Butte 50 and 100 years from today to be inspired by looking over the city built out to the very foot of the butte. And it's a very accurate depiction of what has happened. I checked the number here, so 225,000 visitors per year from the main parking lot, so not the people that come up the Thai Trail, so the main parking lot, so it's probably much more than that, reached the summit. Highlighting a project here, this was a fantastic improvement. City of Eugene, in working with Oregon Parks and Rec funding, reconstructed the summit trail in 2014. How many people before that got lost coming or going? It was crazy. And native plant impacts and rattlesnakes and people falling. And I assisted in writing that grant application. It was really easy to write because you check all these boxes. So this was a major project, helicopters bringing material in, and by and large, it's fantastic improvement, fewer injuries, and definitely most of the people are staying on the trails. The Ridgeline Vision process went through in 2008, and this map, you see things are getting a little more and more refined as we move forward. And in 2006, the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife came out with the Oregon Conservation Strategy, which gave us a lot more detail about what species we should be focused on and what geographies we should be focused on. So you start seeing these, we call them fuzzy blobs on the map, but just kind of indicating general areas for acquisition. Now this is, imagine you're flying over in an airplane, looking, let's see, downtown Eugene right here, Springfield, this is I-5, kind of looking down toward Fern Ridge Reservoir in the distance. And these are, again, green is always parks, right? So these are parkland or conserved properties. So everything outlined in red was added to that system since 2003. So well over 2,000 acres. So starting from the east, I'll just kind of walk you through the next to Moon Mountain. Black Oak Basin is actually fairly recent. Coriel Ridge, Suzanne Arley Park, 500 acres right there. The Amazon Headwaters, South Eugene Meadows, Wild Iris Ridge were all added to that ridgeline system. And then most recently, the Mackenzie River Trust has taken ownership of this 200 and some acre South Fork Spencer Creek property. So I've not been out there, but I'm looking for, actually I had been out there years ago, but I want to revisit. Not open to the public. That's one of those not open to the public yet. So starting, I'm going to highlight now Suzanne Arley Park. So who's had the opportunity to get out to Suzanne Arley Park? Okay. Pretty good chunk, and there's been field trips out there. The trail system, I'll note, those are rogue trails. They're not official city standard trails yet, but starting next year, the city's moving forward on constructing a trail system out there. So this sits on kind of the area between Lane Community College, which is in the purple here. So this is 30th Avenue. This is Mount Baldy, Amazon Headwaters, and Spencer Butte. Very large property, 500 acres, provides some excellent connectivity on the future Ridgeline system, which is eventually going to be connecting over into Springfield and Howard Buford Recreation area in some fashion. And this is a view looking, and it's a big property. It's looking from the east side. You can see Spencer Butte way in the distance, and you'll be able to walk on the Ridgeline Trail all the way to Spencer Butte and beyond shortly. I'm putting the city on the spot shortly. Big property. So looking at it, this is from the south so this is Mount Baldy here, and this is what's called Split Rock Hill on the far end. Mile and a half of property extending along that ridge top. To give you a kind of perspective of what that means, so it's 515 acres currently. So Amazon Park is about 100 acres. We have Spencer Buttes about 300 acres. Central Park in New York City is 843. So this thing is almost the size of Central Park, to put that into perspective. And then kind of our flagship regional park is Howard Buford at 2363. So again, this was acquired to a certain degree because of the proximity to the Ridgeline Trail and expansion of that, but it also has some really outstanding oak habitat, prairie habitat, and wetlands, and part of Wild Hog Creek riparian area. So these have been, the city has really moved forward on a lot of the habitat restoration already, controlling blackberries, thinning the forest, releasing oaks. There's been some prescribed fire out there as well. So I can't believe how fast some of these improvements have happened out on this property. Using the BLM fuels reduction funds. Again, this is right, all these properties are right on that urban wildland fringe, which is an area you don't want wildfires to be starting. So there's a lot of benefit to thinning in these areas. Proposed facilities ultimately down the road will include some sort of pavilion facility, an 18-hole disc golf course, mountain bike park. So that's something that's underserved in our community, other than Thurston Hills. So in Eugene, there's only about 1.5 miles or 2 miles of mountain bike trail currently. This is going to add a lot of capacity for mountain bikers in the near future. This example slide, it's in Boulder, Colorado. It's the Valmont Bike Park, if anyone's been there. Woo, all right. So this is, and Sally has as well. We've biked it. It's an old gravel pit. It's just a bleak site. Suzanne Arley Park, it's in an oak woodland, so it's going to be a lot different. There's going to be a lot of shade. The kind of organizational diagram of the park, you have the dark red is what's called the hub. So there's going to be a parking area access from 30th Avenue. It's in the works. There'll be the pavilion and trailhead facilities there. Everything in green on the map is going to be managed for habitat. So by and large, most of the park will be managed for habitat. The lighter green is going to be accessed by trails. The darker green is kind of really set aside. You can see where the mountain bike park is located in disc golf as well. And then trails. So 15 miles of new trails are planned out there. An extension of the Ridgeline Trail is slated to begin hopefully next year. It could be the following year, fairly soon, using bond measure funds. And then the city of Eugene was able to get funding for a mountain bike park as well. So that is being constructed, same timeline over the next couple of years. So you're going to see quite an expansion. The trail system also is going to include shared use trails, so bikes and hikers, and then universal access trails. So those are trails that are really accessible to just about anyone. They're really low gradient, no tripping hazards, but they're not the paved concrete things you think of with ADA. They're gravel. And this example here is Delta Ponds, and that's considered a universal access trail. Yeah, that's Delta Ponds. I heard you. With the loop in bloom. And then there's been refinement. So this is the plan, which is now available on the city's website for the what is being planned for the mountain bike park and the trail construction occurring fairly soon. So more ridge lines, so moving down the system, the Eugene Parks Foundation is working with City of Eugene on fundraising for some additional trails in these areas. And I have a little schematic, and I think Ariel, are they included in that little brochure there? So these are their total of 4 priority areas. One is going from South Eugene Meadows to the bottom of the Mariposa Woodland or the Willamette Lower Trailhead. The other one is accessing from Fern Ridge Path will connect through Willow Creek up to Murray Hill and to Wild Iris Ridge. Another would be Suzanne Arley Park dropping through Lane Community College. And then the last would be building out some of the trails in Coriel Ridge and Black Oak Basin. So these are all trails. They're in the adopted trail plan and everything. There just hasn't been the funding to do that. So if you want to see these things happen sooner, consider funding some of these. The Eugene Parks Foundation is ready to get going as soon as we have the money in place. Right. The one that's almost ready to go, and they're about, $75,000 short of $650,000 needed. So thank you to those of you who donated to this. We'll make a connection all the way to South Eugene Meadows from the current Ridgeline Trail. Has people been to South Eugene Meadows at all? Yeah, really wonderful place. There's a trail system in there. You have to access it from Blanton Road currently, but this will give you a lot of opportunities to access and extend your Ridgeline experience. The city of Eugene will be building a parking lot, expanding on the parking lot in that area because there is a lot of demand, as you well know. And then another acquisition, again, it's through the Eugene Park Foundation, as looking at expanding the Ridgeline system, and it's the yellow outline property here on that perspective, area called Forest Ranch. It's about 73 acres right there. And I've not been on this property, and I would like a tour at some point, but a lot of oak and prairie habitats, and it includes the headwaters of Spencer Creek as well. Tomorrow, okay. So again, they've done a lot of great fundraising. They're at $920,000 of the $1.2 million needed to acquire the property. So we're getting there, but another good thing, opportunity to help. So I'm going to jump over to Springfield now, the Thurston Hills. So who's been up to the Thurston Hills? This is a well-traveled group. Thurston Hills was acquired by Willamalene Park and Rec District in 2017, and it was opened in 2017. I think the acquisition was a little before that. Another big property about the size of Suzanne Arley Park, 600 plus acres. This aerial photo here, another Paul Gordon, it's looking on the north-facing side of the ridge. Oh, I'm sorry, this is the south-facing slide. And you can see the really interesting rock formations. You get further down to the near the trailhead, there's a lot of great oak and prairie habitats as well. They've done, again, some fantastic restoration work in that area. And this has been built out with trails. There's still more planned, I believe, Fraser, right? But 12 miles have been completed, and that includes a lot of mountain bike optimized trails, but also some great shared use trails. Some gravel roads are also accessible, and there are hiker-only trails if you're interested in that. The trailhead is located on, the main trailhead is on Highway 126 as you're leaving Springfield or coming into Springfield on the south side of the road. And then look on their website. There's a fantastic map showing you the full trail system and what's mountain bike and what's hiker only and so on. Okay, Joe, pay attention now. I'm talking about Green Island. So Joe came on right after the acquisition of Green Island, I think, with Mackenzie River Trust. So this was one of the, shortly after the vision endorsement, this had been in the works, but adding 1,000 acres of prime floodplain habitat on Green Island. Who's been to Green Island? Yeah, that's great. It's a fantastic place. Mackenzie River Trust took ownership from the Green property, who had farmed it for many generations. They were tired of fighting the river, is my understanding, and wanted to see the property conserved. Mackenzie Watershed Council, Upper Willamette Stewardship Network, ODFW, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and many others were involved in the restoration of this property. So these aerial photos were taken shortly after acquisition. So you can see it's farmland. It's grass seed fields and the stuff we're used to seeing. Over a period of 20 years now, almost all of that has been restored to riparian and floodplain habitat. The habitat management is kind of geared around some of our at-risk species. So we call these target species, or in landscape architecture, these are clients. So the Chinook salmon and the western pond turtle and the Oregon chub, that's who we're designing this for, and who Mackenzie River Trust has designed this for and built it for. And then people. So they're public events. They have some great community events out there, and they're Green Island is open to the public. First, it's make sure I get this, second Saturday of the month, March through December. So not January, February, but every other month. And there's usually volunteers and staff out there to show you where to go. And an incredible array of bluebird houses. It just goes on forever. So this is another huge project. The restoration that's been done out there is phenomenal. Over a mile of levee has been removed. So the idea is to open the floodplain, get the river moving into the property again, as it had for thousands of years. 691 acres of riparian forest restored. I got these numbers just a couple days ago, so they're pretty current. A big gravel pit area was restored, recontoured, and reconnected to the old Mackenzie River channel. And then a number of hydrologic connections, just kind of opening that up and retying everything back together. And you can see this aerial photo. You see the rows of trees, thousands and thousands of trees, 500,000 trees and shrubs planted out in this area. And that was the original tree. The ponderosa pine. That's always can orient you by that pine tree. And then this is not even a major flood event, but a flood event in 2019, and you can see what's happening here. See all that water flowing across the site. The channel that's in the foreground here is actually the old Mackenzie Channel. The Mackenzie River in 1964 decided it was going to shift over to the Willamette River sooner. So it took 6 miles off the Mackenzie River. The old channel is here, and it's been reconnected. So it's activated during flood events. So I think this is a wonderful just example of how this is functioning. You can see the water flowing through the property. Okay. You up for another example? Delta ponds. So just about everyone's been to Delta ponds, right? I've seen a huge amount of improvements. When I was a student in landscape architecture, that was always the design studio, was Delta ponds, and it always looked the same. It just was, nothing changed, but a lot has changed since that time. Located right next to Valley River Center. You can see this is Bill, I think you did this map too. I think you might have. I take credit for it anyway. So this is the 100-year floodplain overlay on a perspective. So you have Delta ponds right here. This is Valley River Center for your orientation. Delta Highway runs right through here. So this was historically part of the river. The main river flowed through here in the 1800s, where Delta Ponds is today. It was purchased and mined for gravel in the 1960s. So Delta Highway and Beltline Road, next time you're driving on that, that's where you know where the gravel came from. That's primarily where it went to build those two facilities. So this is kind of another aerial photo, bird's eye, kind of looking down from basically the Valley River Center would be to your right. And you can see river flowing this way. And reconnections are the key to this whole concept. So there were a dozen or so, probably more, individual gravel ponds with levees around them, very steep banks, blackberries, no connectivity to the river whatsoever. The water would get into the 80 plus degrees in the summertime, so not ideal salmon habitat. Again, here's our design clients. So the western pond turtle, they're abundant out there, and spring Chinook salmon. And people ask, so these are centimeters, not feet. So these are the juvenile salmon that really rely on this backwater habitat. So the river gets flooding. You've seen it in the winter time. Imagine you're 4 centimeters long. You're trying to get away from that current. These backwater habitats are just really important, and they've been lost up and down the river. So Green Island, this very similar concept, providing that backwater refugia, as they call it. And you can see just on this map here, all the connections that were made between, so the blue arrows indicate where hydrologic connection was made. And if you've hiked out there, you see that, especially in the winter, the water's flowing under the bridges and things. This cut here doesn't look like much, but it's a really important one. That's where the water flows into the pond system, especially when the river is high. These are all some major some connections are just cutting through a levee. Here, the bike path was on top of that. So the Corps of Engineers got funding to construct something like this. Corps of Engineers was a big funder on a lot of these projects. This is an underpass on Good Pasture Island Road, and the road was closed for weeks. So it's a major project. It doesn't look like much now, but it was really important. And I mentioned the steep banks on these gravel pits. They're very dangerous. People can slide into the pits and have trouble getting out. They had a very similar situation at Golden Garden ponds as well. And it provides very limited habitat value because the wetland edge is so narrow. So in both cases, this was a good opportunity to combine these two projects. The Golden Gardens ponds were, there was plenty of room, so they laid back the banks and contoured out. And they loaded up that soil, they brought it here to Delta Ponds, and they put it back in and kind of created those benches with that same soil. And then went through the process of heavily planting these areas. 100,000 native trees and shrubs, not as many as Green Island, but a lot were. And you walk through there now and it just looks like it's always been this beautiful riparian area. Whoops. And then a lot of related infrastructure went in. So the East Bank Path went in, makes a wonderful loop in that area. The bridge over Delta Highway, and do people live in Willackenzie? Anyone here? Few people. That's a major connection from that area. The Delta Highway has formed a big barrier between the river. So that was a major project that went in. And then under construction, almost done. I checked November is probably I'm putting the city on the spot here. The last bridge segment has gone in, so there'll be a loop on the area to the east of Good Pasture Island Road. Right now, it's kind of disappointing. You get almost to the end and you got to turn around, right? So this is a super valuable project that's been talked about for a while, and I think we can say Delta Ponds is just about done. There's a lot of maintenance and management that continues to happen here. And last example of an accomplishment back into Springfield, the Middle Fork and Mill Race paths. And who's been on those paths before? One of my favorite places to visit, and Joe was mentioning that earlier, you kind of feel like you're just out in the wilderness in certain areas. This map kind of shows, so it's added about 7 miles of path, and it actually makes a really nice loop. You park over in Doris Ranch area, you can go all the way down to Clearwater, and then back on the Mill Race path, have lunch in downtown Springfield, and then get energy to climb over South 2nd Street, which is quite a climb. The photos below kind of show a couple of other aspects of this. The Mill Race pond, there used to be a big log pond there, was restored, meandering channel put in, wetlands, so it's not just a big body of water heating the flow up. The intake was fixed, so there's a big restoration component to this as well. And then one last map here. So you're seeing, so this is starting from the top of the map. You see, we're starting to build those pearls on the necklace. So we're adding to the Willamette system, 1,000 acres in Green Island, Delta Ponds project in Heron Slough, the brand new downtown riverfront park. The University of Oregon is now restoring what they're calling the Willamette River Natural Area, 200-foot setback from the top of the bank. That'll be happening in the next years. Willamette Natural Area, they're doing a lot of planting and restoration work in that area. You see the log ponds and Springfield Mill Race, and then this is another one we could have spent more time on highlighting, but the Willamette Confluence Project, that is a 1,400-acre property adjacent to Turtle Flats, very similar to what was done at Delta Ponds and Green Island, just massive floodplain restoration, reconnecting old gravel pits. So that project is nearing completion as well. And Mackenzie River Trust, Nature Conservancy came in and kind of oversaw. Jason Knuckles is here, I believe. Was one of the people overseeing the restoration of those ponds, small project. And then I don't know what he's doing now, but that has been completed, and then Jason Blazar was overseeing the Turtle Flats restoration as well, so they kind of worked together. So fantastic floodplain restoration. Mackenzie River Trust then took ownership of the confluence area. Okay, so I'm going to take a quick break here. Ariel's coming up here. This is a good friend of mine. Kerry Kirst is a great wildlife. He's an entomologist, and he's a great wildlife photographer, birds and wildlife. I use a lot of his photos, so thank you, Kerry.
Balcony, how are you doing? Good? Good. Before we move on with the rest of the program, I want to mention something fun. As you head out tonight, you'll see a table with wine bottles, generously donated by King Estate Winery, especially for this event, for you. Please be sure to grab one on your way out. It's our way to... I didn't make... This talk is being recorded, so for the people who are watching this on video online, no wine for you. Sorry. But seriously, please take the wine. I don't want to lug it back to my car tonight, so do it. Thank you. Thank you. The journey so far has been nothing short of extraordinary, and the work we do together will undoubtedly continue to shape and uplift our landscape for generations to come. This progress isn't just about the parks, trails, and open space we cherish. It's about the people, the extraordinary people who are the heart of this transformation. It is essential that we take a moment to acknowledge those behind the scenes, the individuals whose passion, dedication, and vision have made a lasting impact on our community. For the past 3 years, the board of Eugene Parks Foundation has honored one such exceptional individual each year with the Parks Legacy Award. This award recognizes someone who has created an enduring legacy, leaving an indelible mark on the natural and cultural landscape. So, what better time than tonight, while we're all gathered here, to continue this tradition? Are you with me? Okay. Let's do it. To present the award, I want to invite to the stage a member of the Eugene Parks Foundation Board and the director of Eugene Parks and Open Space Division, who also happens to be the sponsor of tonight's event, Craig Carnegie.
I thought you were the sponsor, Ariel. Hey, it's great to be here, and I just want to say it's great to be among a really strong, healthy, conservation-minded group of individuals. So I appreciate you all coming out here. This is a great showing. I followed a Toyota Prius down the Amazon Parkway and High Street here, and on the bumper sticker it said, "I support public lands and I vote." And I knew I was going to the right place tonight. So thank you all for being here. And thank you, Eugene Parks Foundation and the Shed Institute for hosting this park series for over the past couple of years. They really demonstrate the value and the benefits that our parks and open space system, our conservation programs throughout the region provide to all of our local communities in the metro area. And it's an amazing story that we've heard already tonight, and sounds like more to come. But I do want to get to this award. You've heard a lot of great stuff so far about conservation projects and protecting ecosystems and building trails for everyone. And this year's EPF award recipient has been a central figure in this story. For over 20 years, this person's put their vision, critical thinking skills, and passion toward building the partnership and seeing that the vision gets activated into reality. They sometimes refer to themselves as an expert cat herder, gently but assertively guiding and reminding the partners toward where we said we wanted to go. Jeff Kruger has been the partnership's go-to planner. He's been the go-to planner for the partnership's entire existence. He's a smart, organized, on-task, easy to work with professional with tons of patience. More importantly, he's a kind, thoughtful person who really cares about others, doing a good job, doing the right thing, and protecting our local natural landscape. He loves the R2R family and, of course, his own family, which he mentioned earlier. He often intertwines with his work for the partnership photos of his family. If you look closely in many of those beautiful landscape photos used in the plans and in his presentation tonight, you'll see his wife, Sally, and his children, Daniel and Jenna, often. So on behalf of the partnership, on behalf of EPF, we all have so much to be grateful and thankful to Jeff for his work over the decades. And he truly, this award is truly, truly well-deserved. So thank you, Jeff, so much.
Well, thank you very much, obviously. I was honestly not expecting that, so right in the middle of my presentation. Where I was saying it's all about the partnership, not individuals. So I accept this award on behalf of the Rivers to Ridges Partnership. And we'll pass it around. Okay, well, I'm going to try to continue here. So I'm going to move forward, and this will be about 15 minutes or so. I just want to give you some of the highlights of the refresh process and what's being planned for the future. So why did the partnership want to update the vision? Well, the good news is a lot of that initial vision has happened. A lot of those big properties have been acquired. Some trails have been constructed. The education programs are moving along. But it became, 20 years is a good time to kind of take a look back. So the partnership got together right in the middle of the pandemic, which is a perfect time to do a planning process. But we there were 3 phases. The first one looked at the broader landscape, so going way up the watersheds, looking, working with those individual partners, the watershed councils, and what properties they were interested in restoring and trying to reflect that on the map. If you go out, on your way out, just take a look. There's that broad geography that shows the entire southern Willamette Valley. So that was new to Rivers to Ridges. Another reason, there were many, many more partners than initially in 2002. It was the 4 funding partners and then a little bit of participation. Now there's 19 partners, so getting those groups to provide input. We have a lot better guidance from state and federal agencies just in terms of what types of habitats are important. Don't get me started on spatial data. We have all sorts of great data available for mapping, better mapping habitats. And we've also wanted to empower the next generation of planners and landscape architects and ecologists to make this their vision as well. So we launched this process. As I mentioned, really the kind of the main look here was on, in the second phase of the process, was looking at diversity, equity, inclusion. Was the partnership was functioning. We looked at things like that. The National Park Service came in and did some really good equity mapping for us to see where people were not having good, in our community, not having good access to parks. Or people that would benefit from having additional parks. Areas that really popped up on the map, East Springfield is an area, River Road area. And a lot of these areas have something in common. They don't have a lot of natural features running through, so creating trails in those areas is a little bit difficult. So I'll talk about how we tried to address that. We did public outreach the best we could during a pandemic. Thank you for those who provided input. We got hundreds of people providing ideas, and then did another design charrette, because that's what we like to do. We got all the partners together. It was the first in-person event many people had been to. It was really tough keeping people from just chatting and catching up. I had to force them through the process. So the core value statement that came out of this, it's kind of reflective of that, providing better access. The Rivers to Ridges Partnership believes that a broad and inclusive coalition of partners and community members is essential for conserving and caring for our region's park and natural system, and that all members of the community should benefit and have safe and convenient access to open space. So that was kind of the building premise. We went from 7 guiding principles to 3. Have you ever heard of that? We should. But this kind of captures that, and I'll just give a little bit of some of the highlights from these. So sustaining a healthy environment, which has always been the mission of the partnership, connecting people to nature, and then stewarding that really important urban-rural interface. So this was kind of as our starting point. So this is 2024 land acquisition. Now we're moving into the vision. And I'm not going to zoom into this, but there's a ton of detail on the map. They're available there if you want to look at your various communities on this map, or the broader regional map. I'd recommend just going to the website and you can dig into this. One of the questions at that design workshop, we asked the partners if there were things on the vision that shouldn't be there, and is the basic framework okay? That was developed in 2003. And the answer generally was yes, that's kind of the framework. It still works, but we need to add some additional things and do some refinement. So we didn't like blow it up and start over with the whole other concept. It was a continuation of that 2003 effort. The vision document was put together, and that was up on the wall out there. Again, there's a lot of detail, and I'm only going to cover a small section of what's in there in the broader scale map as well. So principle 1, sustaining a healthy environment. So there's going to be a continued focus on those priority habitats that I talked about, conserving those sensitive and regionally significant habitats, oak, prairie, wetland habitats, riparian. And then continue to look for opportunities through these acquisitions we're talking about to provide better habitat connectivity for species moving from one natural area to another. So that the pearls on the necklace are the habitats, and using corridors to connect that really increases the value of all the habitats combined. continue to implement restoration, and I can't stress this enough, looking at opportunities, what the Mackenzie River Trust is doing further up on the Mackenzie by Finn Rock, and there's a second phase going in soon. Jasper Park, and then on up to Elijah Bristow. There's a big floodplain restoration plan there. And then moving north of Eugene Springfield past Coburg, there's a huge amount of opportunity on that main stem of the Willamette River for agricultural land, reconverting it to riparian forest. Greenbelt Land Trust is kind of working its way toward us from Corvallis, and we're working in that direction. Expand ecological and cultural burning capacity. So the partnership has done a really good job at adding capacity, adding know-how, getting the permitting process and everything streamlined. We need some good luck with weather. Keep your fingers crossed on that. But the idea is to start partnering with the tribes and other organizations. Again, this is a great example of coordination. So the Friends of Beaufort Park and Lane County Parks and City of Eugene and ODFW, they all provide staff and they move from site to site. The Nature Conservancy is another big player. More focus. So this was not even, I don't think, mentioned in the original Rivers to Ridges, but a focus on green infrastructure. So you travel around Eugene and Springfield and a lot of cities now, you see those stormwater planters and the rain gardens and being put in. The idea is to capture that runoff from the streetscape, the urban fabric, and treating it before it moves into our natural waterways. The City of Eugene and other cities now have regulation on new development, what to do with stormwater. They're required to treat it on site. But there's kind of the middle ground. There's a lot of development that's occurred over the years that wasn't required to do that. So the Long Tom Watershed Council, the Urban Waters and Wildlife Program, and Sarah Whitney's here somewhere, I think right over there. They've done some phenomenal work. This is one example of several projects that have been implemented. They have a huge waiting list. There's a lot of private property owners that are interested in this. So the Willamette Christian Center, if you're familiar, you're going down 18th Avenue. It's on the south side. This is an area my son got his driver's license, and we immediately went to this big parking lot because there's nothing in the way. You can drive around, just asphalt. So this was completed just last year. Adding stormwater swales, a lot of trees, a lot of native vegetation. If you're driving by there, I'd encourage you to just pop in there and take a look. Not to mention, the visual quality aspects of this project. So keep up the good work on that. It's really important. And they're working in Springfield as well now. So connecting people to nature, so that's an important one, providing safe and convenient and equitable access to nature and outdoor recreation. I mentioned East Springfield as an example of having limited access. There's along the rivers, there's some great parks, but just getting people there. So the concept of green streets, so taking linear corridors, public right-of-way, in designated streets and converting those to what we're calling green streets. So picture a park-like corridor with lots of street trees, with bike lanes, with wide, ample sidewalks, art installations, just making it a wonderful walking environment for people. This is an example. This is the Alder Street cycle track, so the Alder Street's a good example. The City of Eugene is implementing a lot of this. 8th Avenue, if you've been there recently, the idea is to connect, make kind of an open space connection from downtown to the river. High Street with a cycle track, 13th Avenue, East Amazon, kind of creating better corridors for connectivity. Springfield, I've had a meeting with Springfield and Willamette staff on this topic as we were introducing this, and there's a lot of interest over there as well, and they had been thinking along similar lines. We've identified some of the potential streets, and these are just concepts at this point. 58th, Daisy Street is a bike boulevard in their plans already, 69th Street, and so on. So that needs refinement, but it's a new concept, and I think a really good one. Providing equitable access to parks and open space. So providing open spaces for people with disabilities to use universal access trails, providing access to people that may not have automobiles and a way to get to parks. So consider free shuttles on weekends or for big events, providing guided tours for groups that may not be familiar with parks or know where to go or know where to hike. So that's a really important concept. So providing better access to people that generally don't go out to parks for various reasons. And then over at the Howard Buford Recreation Area in the Arboretum, there's a bunch of efforts going on over the last couple of years. The David's Chair, has anyone ever seen one of these in operation? They're really cool. I saw one on the coast too. My understanding is the county owns one now, and it can be utilized over at Howard Buford Recreation Area. They're electric, all-terrain vehicles, and there's certain trails that are designated for that use. The number of the trails are being upgraded for accessibility, more universal access. The Friends of Buford Parks working with the county on Trail 3A and North Bottomlands Trail, improving those as universal access trails. And then there's a bunch of accessibility tours going on. Mackenzie River Trust and the county, City of Eugene's involved in that as well, bringing groups, utilizing vehicles to bring them there and then allow wheeled mobility devices to travel around certain areas of the park. So these are different ways that can be achieved. More viewpoints, right? So you have friends that come into town and they want to go to Spencer Butte or Mount Pisgah so that you can get the great view. So the idea of adding additional publicly accessible viewpoints to the system, places like Coriel Ridge, the Thurston Hills, Vickery Park, Cresswell Butte, Split Rock Hill at Suzanne Arley, and Springfield Butte, the lower slopes. There's some great views from that area. So thinking about providing better access to those spots. And then building, this is going to be a real priority moving forward, most likely. So there's a lot of land that doesn't have formal trails on them. They're in trails plans, they're on paper, but actually building out a lot of the trail system that's been proposed. And the Eugene Parks Foundation has done a lot of work on fundraising for some of those key corridors. We spend a lot of money on our open space system and restoration. It's really important that we provide safe and clean access to those open spaces. So that I know there's been a lot of efforts in trying to improve that and get at the root causes for some of that litter buildup. The Willamette River Keeper, another one of the Rivers to Ridges partners, has done a lot of great river cleanups over the years. And then promoting the value of parks and open space from a community health and wellness perspective. So there's a great example. Peace Health is partnered up with Mount Pisgah Arboretum, and doctors are writing prescriptions for getting out and walking around and hiking. Great idea. So this also serves as a pass for the parking over at Mount Pisgah. So that's something again, the Eugene Parks Foundation is fundraising to help support that as well. And then utilizing parks and open space as an educational resource. So you have groups like Willamette Resource Education Network, WREN. It's been operating in West Eugene for a number of years. They've done a great job of accessing natural areas with school kids. The concept of providing better access directly from neighborhood schools, so kids can actually, instead of getting on the school bus, walk down to a natural area. My wife Sally's brought her 5th grade class down to Amazon Creek, right by Edgewood Elementary School for years, dip netting and doing all sorts of things. No school bus involved, and I've helped, and I know the kids love it. And then expanding interpretation of indigenous history is really important. The talking stones, if you've seen those, I think is a fantastic way to do that. Start reintroducing Kalapuya language, and then partnering with the tribes on habitat management, restoration, and ecological burns. And then lastly, stewarding the urban-rural interface. So that's caring for those special lands, important lands that are adjacent to urban growth boundaries. They're under some pressure for conversion and agricultural preservation is a top priority with a number of the watershed councils and the Upper Willamette Stewardship Network, Mackenzie River Trust are all kind of working with landowners on preserving functioning farms and connecting local farmers, ranchers. There's a program through the Willamette Stewardship Network, and it's called the Working Lands Program, but it's providing technical assistance. And then develop opportunities for aspiring farmers. The farming community is aging. There's all sorts of scary statistics on that, and the transition is always tricky, so kind of aiding that transition to younger generations of farmers. So that's a priority. And then lastly, supporting sustainable forest practices. So that's in the urban wildland interface, that's really important. Thinning, removing fuels adjacent to urban areas. There's an economic vitality standpoint from timber harvest, and then it goes hand in hand with habitat restoration. So releasing oak habitat, for example, logging those areas, removing the conifers, and then again, reducing the wildfire threat. So again, it's partnership, all awards aside. I wanted to thank the Eugene Parks Foundation for hosting this great event. I wanted to thank the Rivers to Ridges partners for all their great work, and a lot of those folks are here. I'm always inspired by the people I get to work with and how dedicated they are to these super high-paying jobs, right? Stewarding our lands, so thanks to them. And then lastly, thank you to all of you who support parks and open space and utilize the trails. I love seeing people out on trails, so keep up the good work. So, Ariel, do we have any time? I'm sorry, I had a lot to cover.
4 questions.
4 questions or comments. Does anyone have a question or comment? Other than my dad, who you never know where that's going. Yes?
Do you have a relationship with the Pure Water Partners group?
Pure Water Partners, Joe, we do. Do you know the extent of that?
Yeah.
And how it's formalized?
What you have, Pure Water Partners, the Upper Willamette Stewardship Network, Rivers to Ridges, there are a number of groups that have formed that are sort of intersecting, shall we say. So with certain special efforts, groups have sort of formed and are associated. So there's a lot of back and forth from many of the same groups. I'm not sure exactly where that question is.
Okay. Yes?
Do you have any plans to work with the California tribes to set up a site where people could actually see what it would like to be, what it would like in
Yeah,
their time?
sure. The question was tribal partnerships and are there specific sites? I don't know if I can answer that. Shelley, the city of Eugene has done some bit of work in the Mackenzie River Trust as well. It's certainly the concept is very important. And Joe, do you know of specific sites?
So if what you're describing sounded like a place where you could go and sort of watch.
Right, it's recreated their life, what it was like 1,000 years ago here.
Yeah, currently no. The emphasis right now is on providing safe and quiet spaces for groups that are active in trying to rekindle and strengthen some of those traditions to do that work. And that's happening in a number of places, on some county parks, on some privately held lands. And that's the emphasis at this point, is to really reinvigorate those cultures in situ, but with sometimes some quiet, no access sort of things. I will say that Jeff mentioned that in the fire partnership, the tribes, not only the Willamette Valley tribes, but tribes from as far away as Grand Ronde, Northern California, Southern Washington, are engaging in fire management and prescribed fire, indigenous fire, in the Willamette Valley. So that is a really robust area. And there too, we really don't want people coming to the site while they're doing prescribed burns. But you'll see, I think, more and more integration of that in the coming years.
Yeah, and that's the hope. It's one of the things mentioned in the vision is to increase doing that. I always think it's amazing you're on these big, beautiful sites and they're massive oak trees, and you kind of think of that as the echo of the Kalapuyan people. They didn't leave a lot of relics on the ground, but the landscape is the echo of that management. So, a couple more questions. Yes?
Will the Willamette confluence be reopened for hiking?
Again, that's why I brought Joe.
Who asked that question? We are in the midst now at McKenzie River Trust and among partners of doing a couple of things. The money that was used to acquire that property, the Nature Conservancy was able to muster $23 million, both from the federal government through the Bonneville Power Administration and through the state through the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board. Because that's for fish and wildlife habitat, it came with an expectation that, quite frankly, people, I think the sort of thought was people will be secondary there, that it's a nature area. It doesn't preclude public access, those restrictions. But it does mean that as we develop things, we need to do it thoughtfully and carefully and make sure we're attending to the original values. So to date, like the Nature Conservancy, we've been gradually increasing and thinking about the guided tours that we have. Looking at ways like at Green Island, could we open things up for a day and see how it comes? But quite frankly, one of the challenges we have is we love these places and we always risk loving them to death, so to speak. And so one of the things that all of us in that area are looking at is what could we do on, for example, neighboring county land or other private lands to make things visitable, accessible, sort of a gateway into some of these areas. So access, as you're describing it, I think that's probably a 5, 10, 15, 20-year project that we need a lot of help and vision on. So there'll be plenty of ways to do that, not just through the McKenzie River Trust, but through the Friends of Beaufort Park, through the Arboretum, through the county, through Willamette Lanes planning, and that's a lot of what will be happening in the years ahead.
Thank you. I think that's a great answer.
Good.
Again, why we brought Joe. Yeah. One last question. People want to get their wine, I bet. Okay, let's call it good. What? Oh, sorry. Oh, there you are. Go for it. Yes.
I just wanted to make a great presentation. I wanted to make a
Thanks, John.
small correction and clarification about David's chair. We actually have two permanently placed out at the park. There's a partnership between the Arboretum, Travel Lane County, and the McKenzie River Trust. Free to the end user. We also have a trailer, and so we are trailering those two chairs to other events at places like Green Island, like the Willamette Confluence Preserve.
Great, thank you. And John is a great tour guide and volunteer out at the Confluence property. He knows it better than just about anyone. So let's thank you to the shed, and I'm sorry I've forgotten your name now, but I know you're out there doing the sound. Yeah, Marcus, yes, Marcus. So thank you for that, and what a great venue.